Okay. Good evening. Welcome to all of our Semester at Sea alumni, family, and friends. Welcome to the latest installment of our Wavelengths alumni series. This series started 5 months ago as a way to cultivate community during these unprecedented times while sharing the many talents of our alumni around the globe. We'll be featuring a new Semester at Sea alum from a different industry or career field every week on every Wednesday between 4 and 6 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on our official Semester at Sea Facebook page. I'm Kate Ashley, the Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement in the Semester at Sea Home Office located in Fort Collins, Colorado. And tonight I have the pleasure of speaking with Rhett Reese, who sailed in the fall of 1990 on the SS Universe. So Rhett is a film and television producer and screenwriter, and some of his early credits include Clifford's really big movie and Cruel Intentions 3. He's the co-writer of Zombieland, G.I. Joe Retaliation, Life, as well as Deadpool and Deadpool 2. And he's also the co-creator of the reality series, The Joe Schmo Show, which is very hard to say. Rhett, thank you so much for coming back and joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. We tried this once before. We had an aborted technological attempt, but now we are wired in and this is happening.
Yes. We've got some good technology this evening. So tell us a little bit about how you came to know about Semester at Sea, your experience with Semester at Sea, and how it has impacted your life and your career path.
Yeah, so I first heard about Semester at Sea through my parents, who had heard from a friend of theirs that their daughter did it and loved it. And my parents really leaned on me to do it. It was strange. I kind of had to be dragged to it. I went my senior year of college, and it was strange thinking about giving up part of my senior year, the fall of my senior year. And I had stuff that I was going to be doing senior year, and I kind of had to be, again, I kind of had to be dragged to it. The best decision I ever made, and I thank my parents to death for having made it for me. Semester at Sea was the greatest. I don't need to tell you guys who've all been on it, or most of you have been on it, but it's probably the best kept secret in America. I loved it from day one to day 100. Still among the top 2 or 3 top experiences of my life. It's a community I'm still pretty engaged with. I have dear friends. Some of my very best friends in life were from Semester at Sea, and we're still friends today. And I think among the many things it did for me, one, it was just the experiential learning. I mean, I think at a college, you can learn from your professors and you can learn in the library and in the halls and stuff like that. But it's more of an academic learning that's going on. And yeah, you have relationships and things like that. But Semester at Sea just blasted me with experiential learning. It's the different cultures and all the insane things I was seeing and reading about, but also just, experiencing boots on the ground in these various countries. It really meant the world. And it also, I think, fostered very, very deep friendships, deeper friendships than average college did, because I really do think that the quality of a friendship oftentimes can hinge on the quality of experiences you're sharing together, that the variety of experiences can really bond people. And when you're in some foreign country and it's raining and it's dark and you're lost and you don't know where you are and you're trying to navigate a language or seeing jaw-dropping things or experiencing things that none of you has ever experienced before, I think those start to form these really cohesive bonds. And those have really proved just strong and true for many years for me. My Semester at Sea buddies are just so tight. Even now, we're all tight, and we could all pick up right where we left off at any moment. And we're in touch all the time. We text all the time. And I don't think I would have formed those same friendships in 100 days at my college, because I would have been just seeing people in the halls saying hi and going to the library and playing a little volleyball or whatever. But Semester at Sea really forged those friendships. It also really challenged me personally. It helped me get outside of my own box a little bit. I took some classes that, took some history. I hadn't really taken much history. I loved it. It really forged in me a new love for history that's lasted my whole life. Also drama. I acted on the ship in a few different plays, and that really helped me come out of my shell socially. I was doing stuff at open mic. We did a parody of all the professors at the talent show, sort of my first experience writing comedy, which ended up sort of becoming my career. So it was like I was Don Gogniat, God love him, our the head of core, had to deal with me impersonating him in front of the ship and running a fake core class with all my other buddies and friends as different professors. And we did that, and it just lit me on fire. Like my brain was like, this is so fun, like trying to figure it out. And
Mhm.
you know, we wrote comedy songs for our the shipboard Olympics, for our sea, the Andaman Sea. We wrote stuff for that, and I was acting. I was acting in comedies. I had a wonderful drama professor in Patty Bianca who really challenged me to stretch. You know, as a young actor, I hadn't done much of it, but we were mostly putting on comedy, and so that all challenged me, and it got me really fired up creatively, which is something that I took forward with me into life. And then also, I think just seeing all the cultures. I think I was challenged at all by all the different ways of living and the different religions and all that stuff. And it was very, very refreshing to get outside of my own American head and see the world from a bunch of different perspectives and not be so America centric. And I do remember coming back to America and feeling like I just had a wisdom that had been implanted in me that I hadn't had before. I also was thrilled to be back in America when I finally got back, and I was weeping when I got off the ship. Like it was truly the hardest day of my life. And I just read my journal recently, and I get choked up talking about it. It was very, very emotional. But I remember driving to the airport in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, and seeing the first American stop sign that I'd seen in 100 days, and going, "Oh my God, it's a stop sign!" Like, so it was like the whole thing. It was just, it was a phenomenal experience. And I remember we had a Sunset Club, unofficial, but the sort of the same group of people, roughly 30 or so people, who would get up on the sun deck at night and watch the sun go down. We were always going right toward it because we were headed west. And so we would try to watch as many sunsets as we could. And it was a slightly different group every night. But I remember sitting out there, the sun was going down, and I thought life does not get better than this, and it may never get better than this. And I didn't take it for granted. I had a really, really great time. So that's sort of what Semester at Sea has done for me. And I remember it very fondly, revisit the memories often. And I've also been pretty involved with trying to give back. I think that at least financially, and I only say that because I think sometimes inculcated in all of us is this need to give back to our schools. Like, it's like, oh, you go to a school, and then their alumni association, not their alumni association, but their development group comes to you and say, look, give back to your school. And it's kind of ingrained in us from childhood, I think, to try to give back to your school. I think sometimes Semester at Sea gets forgotten as, it's like, it's not our school. It's not where we say we went to college. And yet it's more in need of funds, frankly, than all of our colleges, because our colleges have endowments and they have big purse strings. Semester at Sea really is operating kind of on a tuition basis, and they need to funnel kids through the program, and they need people to want to go on the program, but they also need us to give back. And I think sometimes we forget about Semester at Sea because it is limited to 100 days, and it passes, and you don't think of it as your school. But I do think we should all try our best, and to just to give back where we can.
Right. And I think sometimes, yes, people forget we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. All deductible.
it's very nice, yeah, to
Yeah.
remember.
But we were also going to talk, Kate, about creativity. I mean, it's like, because I
Right.
think in particular, I went into a creative field. So I'm a screenwriter and a producer, but I largely just write movies and television shows. That's what I've done. And so whether or not you do that, particularly, I do think that Semester at Sea is a place that does foster creativity and can help a creative person as a young person. I think one of the qualities in writing that I see, and I think this sort of goes beyond writing, whether you're a painter or whether you write music, or whether you're a sculptor, or whatever creative endeavor you might have. You could be a poet, you could be a novelist, you could be a photographer, or something in the digital arts or video games, that kind of thing. But I tend to think that what we all need to develop, or what we bring to our field and creativity, is our voice. And voice to me is a little bit of a, it's a it's hard to describe what I mean by voice, but I think it's a combination of sort of where you're from, your dialect, the way you speak, the experiences you've had, your childhood, your parents,
Mhm.
how they raised you, the culture you're raised in, your religion if you had one, your interests, the kinds of things that spark your interest, the kinds of things you want to express creatively, your personality. All of those things sort of coalesce to me, and they create almost a fingerprint of you, a creative fingerprint of you, which I think of as your voice. And the great thing about it is that as a creative person, nobody else shares your voice. Like, Quentin Tarantino has a voice. Like when you see a Quentin
Mhm.
Tarantino movie, he's got a point of view, he's got a voice. It feels like a Quentin Tarantino movie. When you look at a Van Gogh painting, you see Van Gogh's voice coming through. And when you read a certain poet, you might feel the same way about their voice. Uh, but in any case, your voice comes from your brain, and I really do believe that ultimately what comes out of your brain, a lot depends on what you put in your brain. Like, and so
Right.
you need, I think, to get out into the world and experience stuff, like, and experience different people, different
Mhm.
relationships. Like, all of those things will inform your voice when it comes time to deciding how to express yourself creatively, and then
Mhm.
actually doing it, and feeling the uniqueness of the way you do it, as opposed to all the other people break through and sort of tell a story, or impart something to another human being. So semester at sea is like a place where you get exposed to so much. Like, there's just so much going into your brain, so much you're learning, so much you're seeing, so much you're hearing and
Mhm.
feeling. But I do think it can really contribute to your overall voice. And I think the more we can challenge ourselves to experience tons of different things, when it comes time to actually putting things down on paper and being a creative person, your brain is just more lit up, and some of that is going to get channeled back out of you, and it's
Mhm.
going to be reflected in the way you express yourself creatively. So I do think semester at sea was really key in doing that for me, among other many things I've done. But it's hard to, I've encouraged people to read a lot, see a lot of movies, go on trips, experience things, meet different kind of people, expose yourself to novelty, make memories, because those things you will ultimately draw on when it comes time to expressing yourself.
Yeah, that's great. And you
Um,
mentioned that you had just found your journal and have been rereading it.
yeah, I
Was
mean, it's
really,
hilarious. It's hilarious to read.
yeah,
I mean, the great thing about it was I took nothing for granted. As I was telling you earlier,
yeah.
I was going wow on every page. I was, emotional on every page. I was saying, I'm so thankful to be here. I'm so thankful to be in this situation where this amazing experience is somehow paid for and I'm on it. And I really did suck the marrow out of it. And you can tell when I wrote. But I was also really angsty and emotional young person. I fell in and out of love about three or
Right.
four times in 100 days. Like, I was like, and I was just, just all the angst of being a young person was flowing out too, and seeing injustice in the world and having these experiences.
Mhm.
But it all came back to me. I hadn't read my journal for about 20 years, and I was taking pictures with my iPhone of some of the pages, and sending texts out to the people I was talking about, saying, I wrote this about you 20 years ago. Like, and my writing was terrible. It was cliched and awful. I hate journal writing because there's nothing more paralyzing as a creative writer to write, or a writer of any kind, to write a journal, because you want to write well, like as if someone's going to read it. And yet
Right.
that really is paralyzing. It
Mhm.
slows you down. And so you're really kind of spewing, but then you feel ashamed that it's not written well. And I look back, it's written so terribly. I'm like full of horrible cliches and stuff, but it was really interesting to read. And once again, lit up my brain about how much I enjoyed that experience, for sure.
Well, and kind of reading that and thinking about your experience, did you have a country that was your favorite or a country that surprised you that you weren't
Yeah, I mean,
expecting?
I probably my most impactful experience was our trip to China at the time. We were the biggest group, or any group of tourists of our size, or even big at all, following the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
And so we came into a country that had just cracked down pretty oppressively on a student rising. for rights. And we actually stayed at a university while we were there with students. And so we met a bunch of students, and it was very emotional, because I think a lot of them had the point of view of they had been near or had friends who had been near the situation and were kind of reeling from it and emotional about it. They were reluctant to open up about it, but where you were reading through, between the lines, you were definitely feeling the emotion coming off them. We had an amazing bonding experience with them over a few days, not really getting to know each one personally too well, but doing things like sitting and playing John Denver songs. Like we had a couple guitarists, and they did too. And for some reason they knew and loved John Denver. And so we were all singing John Denver together and finding common humanity with these students. And it was just very moving and very impactful. And I remember feeling very, very grateful for our system at the time, and being able to return to our system and not having to stay there. And also just a ton of empathy for those kids at the time. But yeah, that was probably, look, and every other country was wonderful in its own way. We had a big itinerary change right in the middle of our voyage. We were supposed to go through the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean, but the Gulf War was about to start.
Right.
And so they closed the Suez Canal, and we had to go around Africa to the south. So all my winter clothes that I was going to be using in Odessa, in Ukraine, were out the window. And we were going around equatorial the whole way. We went to Africa and Brazil and Venezuela and some other places. But that was all part of the fun. And we had one stretch from Kenya to Brazil that was 14 straight days at sea, 16 straight days at sea, right in the middle of the voyage, which we all dreaded. But then we ended up loving it more than any other time. Like, it was such a bonding time, those 16 days. Like, that was probably the most fun we had on the whole trip. Yeah, I also thought it would be at least worthwhile talking about just the decision to go on semester at sea. Like, I went to Stanford as an undergrad, and I was very much from youth sort of on a path. Like, I was going to high school to get into a good college, and I was going to college to get into a good grad school. And I didn't end up going to grad school, as it turned out, but I was very much a rule follower. And semester at sea was like this weird thing where my parents kind of had to shake me out of my path and my rule following and say, why don't you do this weird thing that's outside the box that not many people have heard of, that is sort of just separate from what you're thinking your path should be, or what people say this is what you do at college. Like, you don't go in the middle of your senior year on some ship around the world. You do a thesis, which is what I was going to be doing. I was going to be doing a senior thesis, and somehow they snapped me out of that, and I went on this trip, and that lesson has sort of boded me well over the years. Like, especially in a creative career, if you look at some of the traditional careers, like being a doctor, being a lawyer, your path is very much mapped out for you. It is very, like, you have to take a certain series of steps to become a lawyer or doctor. And if you don't take those series of steps, you cannot become a doctor or a lawyer. You need a license. You need to go to the right school, and you need to go become an intern and a resident and whatever. A creative career, though, is one that often really rewards stepping off the path, like stepping off what you think somebody has laid down as a series of rules that you have to follow to be somebody. Like, it's a career that really rewards outside the box thinking. It rewards the deviation from the norm. It rewards the refusing to follow rules. And I semester at sea was sort of one of those moments for me early on where I kind of got shocked out of my path. But I have a writing partner, Paul Wernick, who I went to high school with, actually, who's my writing partner in all that we do. And he's been very instrumental in also drilling into me the idea of, we don't necessarily have to play by the rules in what we do. We don't have to listen to the people who came before us who say, this is how you do things. Like, we were trying to sell a reality show as young men, and we went into our agent at the time and said, we want to sell a reality show. And he almost laughed us out the door. He was like, you can't sell a reality show. You haven't made any reality TV. Like, Paul was working at a low level on a reality show called Big Brother at the time, but on a reasonably low level on the show. I was a screenwriter. I'd never dabbled in reality at all, knew nothing about it really. And yet we came up with this great idea and we wanted to sell it. And the agent said, no, that's not how you do it. You're supposed to slowly rise up the ladder in reality TV until you reach a spot where you have enough credibility to sell a show. But that means working your way up through the system. And Paul, to his great credit, and I, to my credit at the time, thought, you know what, we're just not going to listen to that. We're going to try to sell this thing and we're going to try to make it on our own. And we're going to go end around this ladder that we have to climb. We're going to try to jump right to the top, like a game of Chutes and Ladders. We're going to try to do that. And that's exactly what we did. And we ended up, damn the torpedoes, selling the idea. And it actually became a show. And we were like these 30-year-old guys who had no experience doing what we were doing, who were handed an entire show to run it. And it became the most wonderful experience of our creative lives. It was called the Joe Schmo Show. You mentioned it. And
yeah.
But I think that was like an example of, like, again, that's a little bit of that semester at sea outside the box thinking, where it's like, nope, we're not just gonna follow a predetermined path. We're gonna take our own path. And one other story I like to tell that illustrates that same thing, and then I'll shut up and we can throw it open to questions. But
no, this is great.
We wrote Zombieland, and anyone who has seen Zombieland knows that a big portion of the movie, probably everybody's favorite portion of the movie, is the scene where Bill Murray shows up inside the movie playing himself. And interestingly, we wrote that whole sequence for Patrick Swayze, who a lot of you remember who he was. But Patrick got sick with cancer, and we were unable to offer him the role because he was too sick by the time we had the chance to offer it to him. And so we decided we would try to attract some other actors. And our producer, Gavin Pallone, convinced us that the only way to attract these actors was to take out the Patrick Swayze stuff and insert another actor in there and try and go directly to that actor. So we started writing versions of the script for different precise actors and then delivering that script to them in the hopes that they would do it. And we wrote about 11 or 12 versions of the sequence. So it was like, and it was Jean-Claude Van Damme and Mark Hamill and Kevin Bacon and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Sylvester Stallone. And we wrote one, Joe Pesci, we wrote one for all these guys. And one by one, they told us no. Fast forward to, we're out on set shooting this, and the studio was getting really tired of hearing no from various celebrities. They wanted to lock in a sequence, as they said, listen, you have to write a version that does not have a celebrity at all. So we want our heroes to show up at a mansion and they have a big zombie fight, and there is no celebrity in particular. It's just a fun zombie fight. So we wrote what actually turned out to be a really fun zombie fight that happened in this mansion that had nothing to do with a celebrity. But, and they said, look, no more actors. Don't send it to anybody else. Like, we're done. We like this sequence. We think it's really funny. You're wasting time and energy. Everybody's, just chasing their tail on this. Don't do it anymore. And Paul, again, to his great credit, said, you know what? I'm not going to play by that rule. I'm going to keep trying to find an actor secretly. We're going to try to. So we went up to Woody Harrelson on set. This was about on a Monday. We had to shoot the sequence on a Thursday. So we were 3 days from shooting the sequence.
Oh my gosh.
And Paul said to Woody, is there anyone else in your Rolodex? We had Rolodexes back then. Is there anyone else in your Rolodex you can think of who might be willing to fly down here on a moment's notice and play this part? And Woody said, well, I could send it to Dustin Hoffman, or I could send it to Bill Murray. Those were his two names. And we were like, yes and yes, send it to both of those guys. So he called both of the guys. Well, Dustin was an immediate no. He was doing a play, or so I forget what he was doing. He's doing something. So that got shut down. But Bill is a very interesting character. He does not have an agent or a manager. He only has an attorney, and he has this answering machine. And it's just like, it's Bill Murray's answering machine. And he has this one phone number. You call it, you get the machine, and you leave a message, and he either gets back to you or he doesn't. Like, that's all. That's what happens. So Woody had been in Kingpin with Bill. So he calls Bill, he leaves a message. Well, lo and behold, who calls him back but Bill Murray, because he's buddies with Woody. And Woody pitches him the thing over the phone, and he's like, well, I'm not doing anything. He was up in New York, upstate New York, and he's like, I'm not really doing anything right now. Why don't you send me the script? So we were like, okay, what's your email address? And he's like, well, I don't have an email address. So we were like, oh, great. So he said, send it to...
How's this going to work?
How's this going to work? He goes, what I've done in the past, there's a FedEx office down the street from me. Email it to them, and they will print it up, and I'll go down and I walk down and pick it up. That's how I do it. So we're like, fine. So we sent him the script. So first of all, we feverishly write the Bill Murray draft, right? So, and Bill Murray in this version is a zombie. And so we sent him the draft, And Bill walks down and picks it up. And, Paul joked that the kid in the blue apron at FedEx office who was giving him the script is one of the most powerful people in Hollywood, because he's the one who says, Bill, I think you need to look at this one. It's pretty good. Or I don't think you need to look at this one, Bill. Anyway, so Bill takes it home, and suddenly we get word back that Bill thinks he loves the script, interestingly, but he doesn't think he has enough to do, which is a common note you get from actors. But in this case, like, he was a zombie in the scene, so he was just snarling and stuff. And we thought, well, geez, what can we do to give him more to do? Well, somebody had the bright idea. I'm not even sure who, but what if he's not a zombie? What if he's just Bill Murray dressed as a zombie to try to fool the other zombies into thinking he's a zombie so he doesn't get attacked? And what if they have a full-on relationship with Bill in the house? And then what if our lead character Columbus accidentally kills Bill at the end? We'll do this. And so we built this thing, and we're like maybe 36 hours away from when he would have to walk on set. We feverishly rewrite it again out on a stretch of freeway with a laptop computer in the middle of nowhere in Georgia. And we send it off again to FedEx office. So the next thing we hear is that he's going down to FedEx office again to get the script. And I'm thinking to myself, I said to Paul at the time, I remember, I was like, you know what? He's gone down to FedEx office twice. Like, there's a chance he might actually do this. Anyway, we're now sitting out on the same stretch of road the next morning. We're 24 hours from shooting. Woody Harrelson comes running up in his cowboy boots and opens up his flip phone, and on the speakerphone is Bill Murray. And Bill Murray likes the draft and is suddenly spitting out creative ideas to Woody about what he might do with it. He's like, what if I wear golf spikes? And what if I do this? And what if I, and Woody's just, and we're all sitting around. Bill doesn't know, but Paul and I and the director and a producer and Woody are all sitting around the phone looking at it like, oh my God, like he's engaging possibly. So after about 35 or 40 minutes of just spewing ideas, he starts to pause, and Woody says, here's the thing, Bill. He's like, we're 24 hours away from shooting this. We kind of got to have a commitment. Like, if you're going to do it, you got to say so. And there's this long pause, and Bill goes, Woody, he's like, it takes a lot to get me out of bed in the morning. He's like, but I'll do it. And so Woody's like, all right, we'll get you the information. We'll send a plane. He hangs up the phone, and we all cheered, and, a big cheer goes up, and lo and behold, 24 hours later, Bill Murray's getting off a plane, walking onto our set, and we're shooting what became this iconic sequence. And I tell the story sometimes, just, it always makes me smile, but I think it's a great example of what can happen if you say yes in life instead of no. Like, if you actually reach for that out of the box thing that you've been told no, or this is not how you do it. You don't approach the guy that 24 hours before and ask him to be in your movie. That's crazy. It's Bill Murray. He's going to say no. Like, you can shoot yourself in the foot creatively a lot of times by shutting yourself down, self-censoring, saying no instead of being open to a yes, and breaking the rules. And Paul taught me that. And Semester at Sea taught me that, and that would be my plea to anyone who's creative out there. Go ahead and be a leapfrog, do weird things, jump into situations and projects, and say yes, and take a chance, because oftentimes, or at least sometimes, it can pay off in really fun ways. So,
yeah, that's a great story, and that is my personal favorite scene in that movie as well. So
everybody says it's their favorite. So we were very lucky to have Bill Murray. He elevated the movie.
Oh yes, well, it was a great movie, but that is definitely one of my favorite parts as well. Well, do you have any other favorite memories from your voyage or from the ship that you'd like to share before we open it up to questions?
I mean, I to me, it all sort of culminated in this night. We had the ambassador's ball, I think it was, and we were on the equator, and we went out to the basketball court, which, for those of you who are on the SS Universe, if you remember, it was this black rubber surface that was like super gross. And if you ever fell on it, you got black marks all over you. And it started to rain, and it's emotional, but the DJs, all the student DJs, started to play songs that were all rain related. And so,
wow.
And it's this warm rain, and we're all in suits, like in suits and ties, our finery, like because it was the ball night. And it started to rain and none of us took off our suit. Like we stayed out and the women in their formal dresses and the men in their suits, or the young men and women. And we danced to like all these songs that were about rain or had rain in the title. And it was like awesome. Like, and it's like,
Yeah.
until you've like, and then we were sliding across the basketball court with, and everybody's, nice clothes were black, all with from the court. And, it's like, and, sharing a kiss in the rain it was the greatest, like life doesn't get better than that. And it's like, those are the kinds of stories that happen really kind of only on Semester at Sea in their own way. And I think it's up to us to communicate that to the world and get young people to want to go on Semester at Sea and to carry it on. Like I worry about the program during coronavirus. I want to see it thrive forever. And I think it's sort of incumbent upon us to reach out to young people and say, look, go on this thing, like just go, like don't say no, say yes, find a reason. Go on. If you can afford it or if you can make it work financially, that's the hard thing. But if you can, there's really no good excuse not to go on Semester at Sea.
Right. Well, that's a really powerful memory.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Very vivid even now.
Yeah. Well, we have a few questions coming in from our Facebook audience, if you want to jump into those.
Absolutely.
You've kind of touched on this, but, how did Semester at Sea, influence your career in the early days? Did it kind of lead you down that creative path, or were you already set on that path?
I don't think it really did. I mean, in the sense that it didn't make me choose what I was going to do. I was on the ship with Brian Burke, who's a producer, was J.J. Abrams' right-hand man for many years. And he went to USC Film School. And the two of us, when I found out, he was wearing a USC Film School hat on board. The first day when we were getting our books, I ran into him and I was like, oh my God, I want to go to film school. I didn't end up going to film school, but I was like, I want to go to film school. So we struck up a conversation and he had brought his student movies on board. And we became good buddies and they're still friends. But he, at the time, we were sort of hatching our future in Hollywood together. Like, so to some degree, I guess that some of the seeds were being planted there. But in particular, I had actually already wanted to go to Hollywood by the time I went on Semester at Sea, because I had done a little film school in a summer up at Stanford the summer before. So it was more of us just sort of sitting there, anticipating a cool future in Hollywood. And the fact that both of us took different paths and ended up doing what we love was really rewarding, because we look back on those times and we're like, oh my gosh, a couple of moron young kids with big dreams, and look what happened. And I know there are some other Hollywood people who went on Semester at Sea too. Stephen Gaghan did. He wrote Traffic, and he went on Semester at Sea. Neil Moritz went on Semester at Sea. He's a producer of many, many movies. Is it Irene Schlesinger? Is that what I want to say? Is that her name? She's
Eliza Schlesinger.
Yeah, thank you. I got her name wrong. She's hilarious. She went on Semester at Sea. So there are some of us out there for sure. And I know people. I know a stand-up comic who went on Semester at Sea, who makes his living as a stand-up comic. I know other people on Semester at Sea who didn't choose creative careers, but certainly could have. So the ship was definitely full of creative people at the time.
Right. And I might be a little biased since I work with our alumni, but I find our Semester at Sea alumni are some of the most interesting, engaged people and kind and generous, I think.
For sure.
Yeah. Very open-minded and ready to experience a lot of things.
Yeah. And again, maybe if you go back and I don't do that talent show and I don't write the comedy on Semester at Sea, I don't know, maybe I don't get fired up in the way, like, who knows? You never know. But it was certainly impactful in any case.
Well, and another question coming through is some of our recent alumni have been making videos of their experiences. Do you have any tips for someone who's interested in taking the next step during college or right after college, anyone who wants to follow in footsteps?
Well, I mean, I think the great thing about now versus when I was in school and on Semester at Sea is the sort of democratization of that process. Like, I mean, you don't have to be told this, but now the technology to shoot really crisp, great videos exists in our pocket. And
Right.
And you can edit it, in your pocket too, essentially, if you want. But in any case, you can get to a computer and edit it and put it together. The barriers to entry for making stuff are lower than they've ever been. And I do believe
Mhm.
that, I didn't go to film school. I learned on the streets of Hollywood. Not the actual streets, but the metaphorical streets of Hollywood. And I was self-taught. I wrote 6 or 7 straight screenplays before I got one going, or before my career really took off. Interestingly, the very
Mhm.
second screenplay I wrote was about college students. It ended up becoming Cruel Intentions 3 12 years later. So I think that was something that I didn't realize was going to happen at the time, but ended up happening. But in any case, I wasn't formally taught. And I think that the technology that exists now allows you to just do stuff on your own without
Mhm.
formal training, experiment, get better, try things. That you might not need a formal education in film. Not might not, certainly don't need a formal education
Mhm.
in film anymore or you never did, but I think film school in some ways is maybe less valuable than it's ever been because the tools are right in our own hands. So I would encourage people just to write stuff, make stuff, get that seat time, improve your work over time, and it's really learning by doing, and you will improve, and you can make your way that way. And my whole career is a testament to the fact that you really can be self-taught when it comes to writing screenplays and making films.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good advice. Someone, a Spring 19 alum, wants to know where did you get the idea for Zombieland, since we were spending so much time talking about that movie in particular?
Yeah, well, Zombieland, you talk about voice. I mean, ultimately, Zombieland came because I love zombie movies. I saw 28 Days Later, which sped up the zombies, made them faster, which sort of lit me up a little bit in terms of like thinking, oh yeah, that's scarier. That's more of a threat. That could be fun instead of the old shambling slow zombies. And there was this hole in the marketplace at the time, my partner and I thought, which was zombies on television. We originally sold Zombieland as a television pilot. Ironically, it ended up becoming a movie. That was another big rule break there. Like, you don't see TV pilots become movies, but we
Mm.
decided to try to do that when it didn't get off the ground as a TV show. But the idea ultimately came down to me infusing what I consider my voice into a zombie movie. So I've tended to be in life a very careful, neurotic, anxious person. And so I basically imagined, like, what would it be like if I, as a careful, neurotic, anxious person, got dropped into a world of zombies? And I thought, it might be a pretty adaptive trait. Like, it might actually make me a survivor. Like, just the fact that I wasn't going
Right.
to rush off into battle, I was going to think about things and be circumspect. And so essentially, that's what the character of Columbus became. He was me, and he talked like me, and he acted like me, and he he just his whole approach was mine, essentially. So it was my voice getting into this character. And then we created the character of Tallahassee as a means to give him a good foil, like Woody Harrelson. If you got a scared
Right.
guy, you need a guy who's totally fearless, who wants to jump into battle at
Mhm.
every opportunity. And it just started snowballing from there, and it became Zombieland. But again, that was an example of me really listening to the voice in my head, like saying, okay, I'm going to take my particular sense of humor, my particular point of view on the world, all my anxieties,
Mhm.
and fashion it into a character and drop it into the kind of movie that I like to watch, zombie movies. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, well, that's great. Um, let's see here. We have another non-film related question. One of our alums wants to know what's the most exotic food that you've eaten overseas?
It was in China. On semester at sea, and it was a terrible experience. I mean, we went around, we were on a tour, I mean, sort of, but a student tour. We were staying at this university, but we would eat at these restaurants, and we would show up, and they would have these lazy susans, and they would start bringing bowls of stuff and sticking it down on these lazy susans and spinning it around. And I was not the most adventurous eater, and so I had a lot of Snickers bars in my duffel bag, but I ended up eating stuff that we couldn't classify what it was. We were trying to, okay, it was like, is it an animal, a vegetable,
Right.
or a mineral? That was the first choice. And then if it was an animal, did it fly? Did it swim? Did it run? Like, we couldn't tell. And I
Right.
know, I know I ate like tongue and like just stuff that I know, I'm not sure precisely what I was eating, but it was, and I didn't enjoy a bit of, I hated it all. Like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it wasn't like I was like, oh, these are tasty duck feet. Like I was like, this is terrible. Like, and yet it was an experience that that I still remember vividly. And I'm not the most exotic of eaters, and Semester C did not cure me of that, but at least I can say I've eaten a few weird things in my life.
Well, at least you tried. You
I did. I
said yes to
tried.
the
I
experience.
did.
So,
I did
right,
hold my
right.
nose and put some things down, and then went back to my dorm room and had Snickers bars.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to end the evening. Um, One of our alums wants to know, what did you do before or while your screenwriting career was taking off?
Well, I was very fortunate that my parents were supporting me for a couple of years, and they're sort of helping me pay my rent. The very first things I did when I came
Right.
to LA was I got a job as a production assistant, which is sort of the catch-all lowest end job on a movie
Hmm.
set. And I went from a PA to an assistant to the star of a movie. It was a made for TNT movie. William Peterson was the actor. He was great to me. But my PA experience got me a chance to see what everyone on a film set did. And I came into it
Hmm.
pretty clueless. I think most people enter careers very clueless as to what actually happens in those careers. And so I didn't know what
Right.
anyone on a movie did, and that experience really helped teach me just what everyone on a movie does. And that was important because
Hmm.
it allowed me to, pay some bills, but also just get a sense of what I did and didn't want to do. And I got to the end of that movie, and I thought there are no jobs on this movie I'd be good at or want to do except writing and or directing. Like those are the only two things I would have the talent to do. And that's what steered me into writing. And that's when my parents came in. They kind of helped me for a couple years just not have to pay my rent and let me write full time. I did a little work here and there. I did a little more PA work, a little more office work, but mostly I was just writing full time, and it allowed me to write about 6 or 7 screenplays in a couple years, which is pretty fast. And then I got traction, and I started to sell. I got
Hmm.
my first job was writing a Muppet movie, a treatment for a Muppet movie, which is like an outline for a Muppet movie. My first check,
Right.
$15,000. It was like the most amazing experience of my life getting that paycheck. Still remember it. I moved from there to Disney. I wrote some stuff for live action for Disney, then moved over to Disney Animation, wrote some stuff there. Went up to Pixar, wrote for Pixar. So it got a little bit of a
Hmm.
momentum. It started to pay for itself, and I've been working steadily ever since. Knock wood. It's a freelance gig, so you never know
Right.
where your next paycheck's coming from. But those first years were really tough, among the most difficult psychologically of my life, because I thought 7 screenplays in, I just didn't think I had it. I didn't have the foreknowledge to know that my second screenplay would sell 12 years later. And there was another lesson in
Right.
that, which is when you're a creative person, never say there's no final no. Like, if you can hear no 1,000
Hmm.
times and then hear yes, and that's the yes you need. So never give up on anything. That happened on the Joe Schmo show. It happened on that script that became Cruel Intentions. Like, keep trying to sell your stuff even long after you've written it, and no failure is final. But anyway, that's how my career went early on, and it was, again, much gratitude to my parents and much gratitude to my own fortitude to write 7 screenplays without a lot of positive feedback before I finally got rolling. So
Yeah, that speaks a lot to the trait of perseverance. So, yeah,
yeah,
thank you for
yeah,
sharing that.
for sure. And just fighting through the failures, because a lot of these scripts like were not that good. I mean, I was learning, and failure is something that we all go through. But I think what you don't realize when you watch a lot of the people who actually come out the other end in Hollywood anyway and succeed is that almost every one of them had their horrible failure story when they kind of broke down. I mean, my friend Jay Roach, who went to Stanford, who's a director, very great director, has made a million things. He's the best guy ever. But he tells a story about the time that he sort of left LA to go home to Albuquerque, where he grew up, and was driving across the desert and sort of crossed the state line into Arizona and had to pull over on the side of the road weeping because he couldn't stand the idea that he was going home with nothing to show for him going out there. So
Oh,
turned back
yeah.
around, drove back to California, across the state line again, stopped again, broke down weeping again because he thought, I can't go back. Like I have to go home for the support and the love. And so then turned around a second time and went home, and ultimately became one of the biggest directors in Hollywood. So I think, you will have to go through those moments, or almost everybody, very few people don't pay their dues and go through those moments of horrible failure before success. So you have to soldier through that. And it was tough. There was a moment I went home too, and sort of was having a lot of panic attacks and was really sort of struggling with anxiety, and broke down in front of my parents going, I think I might need to, reconsider everything and not do this. And thankfully I stuck with it because it did pay off, but there were some dark times, at least psychologically.
Oh, well, thanks for, being honest about that. I think that's good for especially our younger alums, in these, uncertain times to hear. It's a good message for them. So thank you.
Especially now, like life's given us a lot of negative feedback right now. And you have to plant that long time horizon out there and be like, I'm a young person. This will pass. There's a lot of years to make my way. And when you're young, there's a lot of due paying. There are a lot of people ahead of you who have experience, who went through what you did, but now are in positions that they're locked in on, and screenwriters who are getting hired all the time because they're good and they've proved it. And you're up against those people, and those people need to sort of age out, and you need to come up into, and that happens in any career. And so you sometimes need to be patient, pay dues, all the while taking those Hail Mary passes all the time, taking chances, but also being willing to forgive yourself if it doesn't happen within a year or two or three. It can take a bit.
Yeah. We've got about 2 or 3 more questions.
Sure.
With you. So what's next for you? Are you allowed to talk about any projects you're working on, or?
Yeah, we're just about to go out with a new idea that we're going to try to sell. Not our idea, but an idea that an actor came to us with, and he's amazing. We kind of worship him, and so we're trying to help him sell it and write it. So we'll see what happens with that. I can't say who it is, unfortunately, at this exact moment. We are also rewriting a script of ours that we sold in the spring. We have multiple TV shows that are sort of in development, slowly cranking forward. Hopefully that will happen in the next year or two if we can get out from under coronavirus. And we have another few projects that are in various stages at different places. We have a couple projects at Fox. We have a project at Netflix. We have things that are scripts that we've written that are just looking to find their way through the system, get actors and directors attached, and get made. So that's what we're up to now.
So how have you been spending your time during this pandemic and during quarantine? Has it been helpful for your writing, or has it hindered your writing?
It's been hard. We have a 19-month-old son. And for a while we couldn't have our nanny here. And so it was just mayhem as we were trying to work, as I was trying to work and raise the kid, and he's the best. So it's been crazy, but we've gotten into a good rhythm, and our nanny's coming back. We've had a wonderful sort of stopgap nanny for a little bit, who's helped us too, that's allowed me to continue to work. When you work at home, as we're all learning, everyone's basically learning what I've learned my whole life, because I've always worked at home, and I've always had to deal with the difficulties of working at home. Like, working at home is great, but there are also a lot of difficulties, and especially with kids in the house. And I feel like suddenly everyone got a window into what I've been doing a long time. So in some ways I was more prepared for this than most. Like, I've sort of taken to it like a duck to water. But that said, it's been insular, and I can't wait till we're back out there again, and can't wait till we're able to see productions get made and shoot. And that pipeline will unclog, and we can continue to write and hopefully make some more movies before we hang it up. Oh, can you hear me?
Sorry, just a little frozen on my end.
Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned wanting to take your son David onto the ship in the future, wanting to get back on the ship as a lifelong learner, maybe an interport lecturer. You may not going on the ship with him when he's a college student, but what are some of your plans to get back on the ship?
I will not be that guy who attends semester at sea while his son is on it as a college student. But I would love to go back on it at some point with him as a young kid, in the 10, 11, 12-year-old range. And maybe if he has a sibling, I think that would be amazing. There were kids on our voyage who seemed to gain a great deal from it. They had a blast. So I would love to go on it, either the full voyage, which would be my dream if I'm retiring or slowing down, or if it works out, maybe an interport lecture, teach screenwriting for a couple weeks or something like that. Like my wife is an actor, maybe she could teach acting and I could teach screenwriting. Like the possibilities are there, and I've got my eye on it. I definitely want to do it again.
Well, I think we would love to have you back on the ship anytime. And I know our future voyagers would be very excited to learn from both you and your wife. So we'll keep that in mind.
Yes, for sure.
Well, right before we wrap up, is there any final thing you'd like to share about your semester at sea experience, other advice, any final parting thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't really have any final words of wisdom. I mean, I think back to one thing I would say, and one thing I've learned in life is just to make memories. Life's shorter than you think. For those of you who are just getting out of semester at sea or have been out recently, you really will just blink and you'll be old like me. And so I do think we just need to make memories. A lot of times we kind of coast for a long time. That's kind of what it feels like in coronavirus, like how few memories we're making. It's like Kumail Nanjiani posted the other day a tweet. He goes, "Remember experiences?" And that was like such a funny tweet to me, because it's like, yeah, we just kind of don't have experiences right now. We're all unable to make memories. It's like this long blur of days that blend into one another. But if anything, that should remind us how important it is, when we do have the freedom to go out into the world more, to go out and do stuff, do the kinds of things that you'll remember in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as often as you can, as opposed to just the normal routine of life that you won't remember or will all blend together. So I would say make memories. And I don't think there's any better evidence of that than what it means to go on semester at sea, the ultimate memory. So yeah, you guys, you were lucky to do it, and I was lucky to do it, and we should all be very grateful.
Oh, thank you so much, Rhett. It's been so much fun talking to you.
Same to you, Kate. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Zach, for being the technical wizard. I'm glad this worked out this time. And hello to all my buddies on semester at sea, or any of you, if you happen to ever see this. I love you guys.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Rhett. And thank you to all of our alumni and friends for joining us this evening. We love sharing your stories and highlighting the wonderful work that all of you are doing around the world, and how you are all giving back to your communities. And as you mentioned earlier, Rhett, as you all are considering giving back to the causes you care about, we encourage you to remember Semester at Sea. As a nonprofit organization, your gifts, no matter the size, are needed now more than ever. So if you are able,
and you didn't put me up to saying that either. I said that on my own.
I didn't.
That clear. Yeah, they did not ask me to say that. That came from me.
Oh, well, thank you. No, it flowed very nicely, and it's nice to remind people of that. And I know these are challenging times, but if you are able, we ask you to consider making a recurring monthly gift through the SAS website. Those monthly gifts will have the greatest impact at this time. So thank you in advance to our generous alumni. And I hope you all will be able to join us next Wednesday, September 9th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time for the next installment. We will be featuring an alum from the fall of 2007, Alex Navarrete. He's a solutions engineer at Slack, and he will be discussing how social change and technology will shape the future of the workplace. It'll be a really interesting discussion. And finally, in closing, if you or anyone you know is interested in sharing your story or an area of expertise or a special talent with your Semester at Sea alumni, let us know. Email wavelengths@semesteratsea.org, and we will consider you for a future segment. And that's it from us. But thanks again, Rhett. It was so nice talking to you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great night.